and then you pause the meeting, the recording.
Good afternoon. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Great. Seems like we have about 42 people, now 43. So the meeting of the South San Francisco Mayor's Commission on Racial and Social Equity is called to order. Today is September 16th, 2020. We'll start with a roll call. Edith Arias.
Present.
Jeff Asopardi.
Present.
Gladys Balmer.
Present.
Norm Faria.
Present.
Mike Futrell. I saw Mike earlier, but maybe
He's here.
oh yeah. Cheska Ibasan. Vanessa McGovern. Vanessa. Hermes Monson. Patricia Murray.
Here.
Mark Nagales.
Here.
Kayla Powers.
Here.
Liliana Rivera. Bobby Vaughn.
I'm here.
Andrea Fernandez.
Present.
And myself. How many people do we have, Paige? Can you see?
Mike Futrell's here. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm just making sure that commissioners are promoted to panelists. So I think everyone is great.
Based on the roll call, I have 10 present commissioners and additionally 1 alternate present. There may be commissioners coming in a little late, and I will note that time of arrival in the minutes.
Thank you for that, Lisa.
So we'll proceed. Good afternoon, everyone. As this is our 4th meeting, almost everyone must be familiar now with the drill. Before we proceed, I'm pleased to announce that we will have a new member of the team next meeting. The city has hired a graduate fellow to work on issues of racial and social equity, including issues that will be coming from this commission. Her name is Sharon Watts, and on Monday, September 21st, it will be her first day in the city manager's office. Sharon recently graduated from San Francisco State University with a Master of Public Health in Community Health Education. She was awarded the Willie Brown Fellowship and had worked with the City of San Francisco Department of Public Health, focused on social justice and civic leadership. Currently, she is a housing advocate with the San Francisco Housing Development Corporation. She will join us next meeting. At our last meeting, we knew from the very beginning that public safety and policing would be an emotionally charged topic. However, there was a level of expectation that commissioners should uphold. While we understand that there will be multiple perspectives and expression of deeply held beliefs, We expected everyone to speak and act respectfully, especially towards each other. You're always free to express your personal opinion as long as you are not committing slander or defaming anyone. We must also avoid the attitude that for me to win, someone should lose. We must all win for the sake of our community. I personally received numerous emails regarding the last meeting. There are those of support and those of who disapprove. I am very realistic. I cannot please everyone, but we will keep on going. Our focus must remain to identify actionable recommendations to reduce racial and social inequities. And that is not just confined to policing. Note that we will not talk about school resource officer today. We are letting the Unified School District finish fact-finding and data gathering efforts. This week, we will continue our information gathering and we'll talk about educational inequity. The chat function will be disabled to keep our attention to the speaker and not distracted by another conversation. I know that our schedule is every other Wednesday, except for the 30th of September. We will resume the meeting on October 7th to discuss housing and economic development. Generally, when we talk about education, we immediately think of schools. According to Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. For someone who grew up in a third world country, for someone whose parents only had 5 years of education due to poverty and lack of social support, for someone who had illiterate grandparents, I stand here as a witness that I did change the world for my children and grandchildren. Although I did not have to contend with the concurrent racial inequity as I was growing up, I had great disadvantage at school. I walked to a local school on the first day of school with my playmates and their parents to register myself. I was 6. My parents were working class, so they need to work every day. I am the child whose parents don't show up during parent-teacher conferences or when there was a school event. In retrospect, I think they were afraid of other parents or even teachers to know that they didn't even finish elementary school. I made my parents proud when, as the oldest of 6 children, I graduated with a BS in chemical engineering from a top engineering school in the Philippines. Later, after immigration, I obtained my Master of Public Health while keeping a full-time job and raising a family. My story is not very uncommon. I know firsthand several women who went through this and did what I did. So this is pretty common. However, it's still a testimony that we could always change our lives and break the cycle of poverty and inequity through education. Education from school is not enough. Albert Einstein said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. This delineates the difference between an educated person and a learned one, and we should decide what we want to be. A person who is educated has a degree, capitalize on that degree to get a job, rely on the job to make money, but no amount of education could give one self-control and wisdom. Someone who is learned may not speak much, but able to weigh the words he or she uses, able to maintain self-balance in many kinds of situations, and to focus on the job while being respectful. There is no denying. Science has shown that a child's experiences during the early years are vital to building the foundation for future success, not only in school, but in life as well. That's been very evident when I attended the Gene Academy graduation last year. My daughter, who works at Genentech, volunteers her time as a Gene Academy tutor. One of her kids, a 10-year-old boy of color from Martin School, who told me that he never thought much about his future but due to his exposure to Genentech and his newfound confidence, he was planning to be a scientist or a doctor. It warms my heart. It is why we are here today. Children in South San Francisco deserve to have equitable access to education, and our obligation is to give them what they need to be properly educated. As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. So for the first item, we will approve the minutes of the September 2nd meeting. I know that there was a last copy that was sent out due to some edits. I hope you were able to read it. But if you have additional edits or comments, you should be able to discuss that. Is there anybody with the
Madam
who
Chair,
has comments? Or
I can make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
it has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Please raise your hand if you approve. Excuse me, if you approve.
Tenant proof.
Did you all get it?
Yes, we have 11 in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. So the goals for today is to understand the South San Francisco landscape for education. So it's sort of a baseline. We will also review the opportunities to reduce structural, institutional racism and racial inequities related to education. We will gather commissioner feedback on example approaches. We will also, if given a chance, identify one or two approaches to advance for investigation during this phase one, and we will listen to public comments. I'm turning over the meeting to Kim.
Thank you so much, Chair Nicholas. So today we look forward, as Chair Nicholas mentioned, to taking a look at the context related to racial inequities in education. We'll be welcoming guest speakers to let us take a closer look at the services that exist in the city, as well as what's happening in SSF Unified School District. So that's a great benefit for today's meeting. And then we'll also have an opportunity to hear from the community. We are extending again public comment extending the meeting to make sure that we have enough time to really hear what the community has to say as well on education. So as we've seen in all of our meetings, the commission is divided into 3 phases. The first phase is where we are now. So it's about learning, gathering information, hearing from the community about each of the topics that were identified in the charter. We're not making any final decisions during this first phase, as we've mentioned. And we will have the opportunity, as Chair Nicholas mentioned, to identify a few approaches related to each of the topics that we can move more quickly on to gather further information and bring it back to you at a later point for decisions in phase 2. Thinking in preparation for this meeting, I wanted to just step back and kind of underline the importance that this meeting, this commission holds for South City. I think all of the commissioners have join this commission in order to make South San Francisco a better place. And I really want to underline the opportunity that exists with this. Not every city is doing this, and I really I feel like it's an important opportunity that we want to take advantage of. Mike, if you want to go ahead and mute, I think we're getting some background noise.
Got it. Sorry.
That's okay. I know a lot's going on. And, you know, the other thing that I really want to introduce early today is, again, this idea of finding common ground and listening to the diverse range of perspectives that we have on this commission intentionally to bring forward divergent ideas. So, you know, I'm excited about the policies, programs, and practices that could potentially change in South San Francisco as a result of your contributions as commissioners and, you know, hearing from the public and community. And so, you know, I don't have any particular agenda, or, you know, I won't be taking sides here in this process. I really do want to make sure that people feel like they can contribute, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And look forward to our conversation today. So today, as Chair Nicholas mentioned, is focused on education. We have moved the topic of economic development to the next meeting, October 7th, which will focus on both housing and economic development. So I think also, you know, we've seen the group agreements that the commissioners, that you all agreed upon and approved at our first meeting. I won't read them all, but I did want to focus a little bit on the final one, participate and be self-aware. I invite everyone to listen for understanding and meaning. I think that, again, we really want to make sure that people can express their perspectives. We want to hear from community at public comment, and to really be able to listen carefully to what people have to say. We are modifying the way we're going to work together so that it's one person contributing at a time. So in other words, one way of putting that is one person, one mic. This means that we're going to be, as Chair Nicholas said at the beginning, disabling the chat. And we are emphasizing that for, you know, this is a short period of time that we have together, so we really want to maximize it. We anticipate that you might not all get your ideas out during the time we have together. So we're also encouraging people to email, and I'll show you the email shortly, if you have any additional comments or experiences that you think are relevant to consider, or ideas and approaches, because ultimately we really want to bring forward new policies, practices, and so we welcome all of your input and feedback in those ways. So specifically, how that will work is like in the past. So for commissioners, if you raise your hand using that feature, raise the hand button, we will call on you and be able to focus on one person at a time. And if you have any additional comments or experiences that you want to share, please email mayorscommission@ssf.net. Of course, that won't be a real-time feedback because we want to focus on what's being said during our time together. But we will look at that information and bring it back. And then for for community members during the public comment period, again, like in the past, you can participate by speaking during the public comment, raising your hand, and we'll call on you and unmute you. And then as well, please send any information or experiences, thoughts, considerations to the email here, mayorscommission@ssf.net, and we will consider it and bring it back to you. So with that, we wanted to, again, start by reviewing the current context related to racial inequities, structural and institutional racism, and education. So we're first going to start with some current data highlights related to education, and then we'll hear from the superintendent as well as a presentation by folks from city services. So first, in terms of the local landscape, we wanted to highlight some racial inequities related to education. So specifically, we know that there are many factors that affect a student's ability to focus and learn. And in this commission, we're looking at how health, education, housing, and economics all intersect. And specifically, I think it's important to think about how they overlap and affect young people's outcomes related to education. On the left, when we're looking at all students in South San Francisco, it looks as though students are doing well and are in the green zone. But if we hone in on and look at the data by priority populations, we see that not everyone has the same outcomes. So you can see that key populations like African Americans, English learners, Latinx, students who are homeless, Pacific Islanders, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students are more in the yellow zone. And I think what's important too is to keep in mind that these disparities in outcomes in educational outcomes are also seen at the state and across the nation. So they're comparatively similar. In terms of math or outcomes related to tests taken in mathematics, while all students in South San Francisco test out at the yellow zone, again, when you look at priority populations or key populations, you see different results in outcomes related to testing and math. I think again, what we're considering in this commission are the many factors that affect these outcomes, and specifically thinking about those factors when we're looking to improve outcomes in education. So historically, across the state and nation, Black and Latinx students have been suspended more often than white students. And in California, we've started to address this by eliminating suspensions, for example, for defiance or talking back for students in kindergarten through third grade. Dr. Moore is going to say a little bit more about how South San Francisco Unified School District has also been addressing these inequities at a local level. So here what we wanted to do is to show you on the left the racial ethnic background of all South San Francisco Unified School District students. So you can see the range of the breakdown compared to those students who are suspended. So for example, while 49% of the students in 2018-19, so that's the last bar on the right with the graph of all students, so while 49% of the students in 2018-2019 were Latinx, 63% of those students of those students who were suspended were Latinx. So you can compare, while the population was 49%, 63% were suspended. That's an important disparity.
quick clarification. Sorry, not 64% of Latinx students were suspended. 63% of
64
students
of
who
those
were
who were
suspended
suspended.
were Latinx.
Yes,
Nowhere near
yes.
63% of were suspended. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the next slide, what we see here is that although 31% of Asian children and 28% of white children are enrolled in early childhood education in San Mateo County, only 25% of Latinx and Black children are enrolled. And as we've heard and we're going to hear, the importance of early childhood education is critical for later outcomes, beneficial outcomes. So much like health and social services, there are a lot of government agencies as well as nonprofits that address opportunity gaps and other inequities related to education. So this slide includes city services, the school district, county services, and those services offered by the federal government and the state. And an important thing to think about also is that the guidelines and funding determined at the federal and state levels dictate a lot of what happens in the local school districts. So again, kind of thinking about policies. So now I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Shantara Moore, who is the superintendent of SSF USD, and I will hand it off to you to continue. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I wanted to thank the commission for inviting me to come and share a little bit more about what we are doing in South San Francisco Unified through the lens of equity. And by no means are we where we need to be. And so I think that it's important to acknowledge that. I appreciate, Kim, what you said about recognizing that there are outside influences. What we are trying to do here is focus on our sphere of influence. What things can we do differently and better to serve all of our students, and particularly those students who are marginalized? So I am going to, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share my screen and we can go through the presentation. All right. Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. So due to time constraints, I'm not going to go through every single thing that's written, but I will try to capture some of the salient points and the highlights that are listed here. So the first thing that's really important for us is to define what equity is and what it means here in South San Francisco Unified. And so we're fortunate that we have a school board that recognizes and has a desire for educational excellence across our campus, across grade spans, across all of our student body. And so we recognize that for us here in South San Francisco Unified, it means that each student is receiving what they need, when they need to develop to their full potential. I'm going to actually stop sharing because I want to share another slide as well that was not included. What's also important for us is we spent a lot of time understanding as a community when I first became the superintendent that if we're going to make it to our destination of excellence and equity for all of our students, that we have to really be mindful of the way in which we engage with one another. And so we have the metaphor of our car. And so I'll share that. And we started with this metaphor early on to focus on some commitments we needed to make to each other, to our community, and to our students, that we are going to engage in ways that are professional and transparent. We're going to focus on outcomes for our students, which is the A, the achievement. And you'll see here it's about providing tools, resources, and supports for all of our students because we strive for equity and educational access and opportunities for them. And the only way we're going to get there is if we build and continue to maintain strong relationships with our students and with each other. So that's getting at the culture of our organization. And you can see that it's an inclusive part of the work that we're doing, that every person, including our community, internal community and external, plays a role. And you can see the road that we are driving on. So it has since evolved. As we started digging in a little deeper into this work, we realized these are systemic issues that we need to spend more time kind of unpacking and understanding. And so we took our car, we're on this journey together, and for our staff, we use this to help us understand that in order for a car to run seamlessly, all aspects have to be in place. And so this is what we use to help our team understand how do we leverage data so that we are actually looking at it and understanding, have we disaggregated it enough to know if our students are actually being successful, which ones are, which ones aren't, and then if not, why not? And so again, you see the yellow brick road of equity that we are driving on in this journey, because there's a realization that we have a mission and a vision to support all students, not some students. And so it's important for us to keep this as our ongoing lens of the work that we are doing. So I just want to share that as a way to frame how we have framed it here in our school district. So I'll get rid of that, and then I will reshare. Oops, I lost you. Here we go. Okay. So let's make that larger. Okay. So how have we defined what systems are in our district? So we look at it, what we coined as the 5 Ps. We look at it through our policies, practices, programs, people, and protocols. And so our policies are really looking at it through our board policies. What policies have we established for our students in South San Francisco Unified? When we look at our practices, it's let's take a step back and look at our discipline practices. Are they equitable? Are we unintentionally creating barriers for students so that they aren't going to be successful disciplinary wise? We look at our instruction. What are the ways that we are engaging in pedagogy and practices that we're using that can connect with the students that are sitting in front of us? When we look at our programs, it's important that we provide programs where students can see themselves in our school district. It can be clubs, it can be academic programs, homework centers that we provide. It can also be social emotional programs, but the intent here is really to think about, one, how can kids see themselves and enter and have access, but it's also what are programs that we are able to provide that show that we are intervening early for our students to give them another alternative. And so I'll speak a little bit later about our alternative to suspension program and our alternative to expulsion program. And keep in mind that this is the lens that we developed that under. The people aspect is twofold as well. So when we are talking about this, we're talking about our hiring practices. And so taking a closer look at of course, making sure we are coherent and in the questions and we're consistent in the questions that we're asking across the board, but more importantly, that we are spending time really trying to understand what people's values are. What are their belief systems? So that when we hire, we're hiring people that share the same core beliefs and values as we do. The other piece of the people aspect of our system is mindsets. And again, belief systems, but then how do we then take that and provide ongoing professional development that will help strengthen our staff's understanding around this work so that ultimately we can positively impact students. And then the last piece you hear is just processes and protocols that we have. So what is our protocol for our communication and our strategy if we have community members who don't have technology, aren't easily able to access technology? So we've really tried to be thoughtful about that. Our placement criteria, how do we engage so that our students have the access and the support into higher level courses? And I'll share a little bit more about that as well. So again, I'm not going to go through every last one of these because I know I was given a certain time frame and I want to be respectful. But to start, when we look at our curriculum instruction and assessment, one of the things that I'm really proud of, and again, we still have more work to do, that we've shifted our process for evaluating and vetting curriculum. So one might ask, why is that important? So I'll give an example. We started with our history, social science adoption about 1.5 years ago. And one of the things that we have done differently is really looking at it through this equity lens. So asking about what are the access points for all of our students? What are the strategies that they are recommending and employing to serve our English learners? As we're looking at this adoption, how well does it meet the needs of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community? What are the literacy strategies that they have built in that will help support all of our students who are bringing diverse literacy levels into our classrooms every single day? And so we intentionally did that so that we could be informed consumers that are are maneuvering through the lens of equity. And then we revised our course placement practice, and that was designed because we had done some studying of our data, and we were noticing that some of our students were performing probably on par as other students. Some were recommended and moved into higher level courses and others were not. And so we ended up working hard to remove the subjectivity out of it so that we could have more objective criteria, and that allowed more of our students to access higher level courses, and particularly the higher level math pathway. And then again, having some targeted supports for our English learners, we now have a team. They're essentially coaches, but they're called teachers on special assignment that we have been working with to provide direct support for our English learners and to really provide professional development for our teachers. And so again, I won't go through every single one. For this, I think especially now we're in the midst of COVID, pandemic, and we have to connect with our students and we want to connect with our families. And so it's really important for us to take the opportunity to survey our families and find out, what are your needs? Do you need hotspots? Do you need Chromebooks? So I just listed to date what we have distributed to our community. The other thing to note that, we talk about it takes a village, and it absolutely does take a village. We have a partnership, a wonderful partnership with Genentech, who also donated $500,000 toward technology, and specifically to ensure that our community had access so that they could participate in distance learning. And so that's important to note as well. When we look at our discipline, I included just an overall from 2015-16 through now, and that's the year I started as a superintendent. That was the only reason why I chose that as a benchmark. And you can see just our data over time of how we are really trying to lessen the outcome of suspensions, especially for kids of color, kids living in poverty, etc. So as part of our work, and Kim mentioned this earlier, we were really attuned to looking at our data, and we recognize there's a disproportionate number of students being suspended and some being put up for expulsion. And so about a year and a half ago, we were looking at our data and noticed this and thought there's got to be another way we can implement a program similar to our alternative to expulsion program. And so we began planning that. We launched it last year. Unfortunately, we only served one student, or fortunately, I guess depending on the way you look at it, one student due to COVID. But really the intention behind this is to act as not only a deterrent, but to provide an educational component to it, to help our students really start thinking about their choices before they may or say or do something that could get them in trouble. And so really we're excited because we've seen some positive results with our alternative to expulsion, which you can see that has been in existence for about 10 years now. And so it's a week-long program. We engage our families to participate in this program. We are going on field trips with students so that they can really get a picture of what life could be like if they don't really take a step back and really reevaluate their actions so that they don't end up on a detrimental pathway. So years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, we again were identified as being disproportionate, but for placing students in special education. And so we convened a team. It was a coordinated early intervention team. And the task was to come up with recommendations for what we needed to do differently and better to serve our students so that we wouldn't keep having these disproportionate areas that we needed to mitigate. And so what came out of that, they studied our data, they had lots of conversations. It was a committee of teachers and school psychologists and special education staff. And what came out of that was a new matrix of behavioral responses that gives really other ways to engage with students versus X, if you do X, then this Y is the consequence. We also built in additional parent outreach support services, counseling and mental health services were added at that time, and we have significantly increased. And so we're really proud of that. And again, the intent was to move away from punitive responses to being really more progressive and really trying to look at it through this lens so that we're not just punishing kids. How can we engage so that it becomes a teachable moment? I just listed this here just so the community and the commission would know some of the relationships that we've been able to establish with other agencies. The handbook really was designed, we want to be able to provide coherent and aligned systems in our district. And one of the ways that we are trying to do this through this lens is developing a framework, a handbook that walks us through how we engage. And our site administrators are coming together monthly to talk about what happened this month, what are you struggling with, what went well, how are we doing with implementing the handbook. And the idea is that we are responding in a more equitable, consistent way, no matter the campus, no matter where kids are. Again, we still have work to do, but this is the intent and this is what we're striving toward. Now, because we looked at our special education, we transitioned here to what's called performance management. Really last year, we began it a couple of years back, and that really, it enables us to dig deeply into looking at data and to really analyzing whether or not we're making progress and to make sure that we are monitoring implementation of our work to see, are we having the intended impact that we desire? And if not, what do we need to do about it? And so you can see here, our special ed department has really started conducting root cause analyses on individual groups or IEP files for students because we're trying to identify what is happening and what can we do to intervene. We're fortunate our board has allowed us to hire internal behaviorists. Previously, we were contracting out, and we all know how important it is if we think back to our car, that R is on relationships. And so if we can build a relationship with our students, with their families, that we then can provide that ongoing support so that it will hopefully be a deterrent even before a student may be may come forward for doing something that would require suspension. We have hired a coordinator of mental health, behavior, and assessment, which we are very excited about. And that is not only designed to help us streamline procedures, referrals, and interventions, but it's the training aspect that is also really important in developing systems so that we will be able to provide equitable intervention practices for our students so that they can remain in our classrooms and learning, and we don't have to battle them not being in class and unable to learn and have access to the material. Again, this is a duplicate slide. I just wanted to also call out just the partnerships that we have. And this is for mental health services on our campus and counseling. And then this is, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because I recognize how important this is in our community as a whole, in our school district as a whole. And so a few years back, I want to say 4 to 5 years, we really recognized that this is the need for us. And so it became part of our LCAP, that is our local control accountability plan. And it's a plan that you can look at it like a strategic plan. It's a plan that we also submit to our county and the state. And so that we can, and the whole intent was, how are you going to serve underserved students well? And so we write our plan through that specific lens because it enables us to really think about, well, what do we need to do differently for our students who need greater access or who need more supports? Remember, thinking back to our equity definition, giving students what they need when they need it in order to thrive and reach their full potential. And so I just share this slide just to share the amount of money that our board and our staff has brought forward in mental health so that we can get to a place where kids have the support they need so then they are ready to engage in class and in learning. So I'm not going to go through this slide, but I did want to mention the importance here that there's a commitment in South San Francisco Unified School District, and the commitment is to work toward equitable outcomes for all kids. It's to make sure that we are an inclusive and welcoming school district. It's to ensure that we are opening up access and doing our very best to remove barriers for our students. And so we did start an equity, diversity, or we initiated an equity, diversity, and inclusion committee last year, and we were about to send applications out, and then the impact of COVID. And so we are excited about this committee, and we are right now reassessing capacity, as you can imagine. There's an urgency for us, but there's also the realization that our educators and our community are dealing with something that they have not had to deal with before. And so we're trying to balance that with just the already angst that people have. But there's a lot of interest and excitement about engaging in this work. The other things that we have done are listed here. I won't go through them, but I wanted to share with our community. So just so that we're coming from the same lens and understanding. The other piece that I will call out here is we do have a wonderful partnership with Genentech. And so I listed just one of many programs that we have with them. The fact that they are fully funding scholarships yearly, over $500,000 specifically to students who are traditionally underrepresented, speaks volumes to just the belief in the vision that we have around equitable supports for all of our kids. So again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I at least wanted it for the commission and our community to see and hear. And then I'd like to end with this slide. To push for excellence today without continuing to push for access for less privileged students is to undermine the crucial but incomplete gains that have been made. Equity and excellence cannot be divided. And so really, this is the heart of our school district and what we are striving to do. And like I said when we started, we certainly have a ways to go, but we are committed to this work, and we are committed to ensuring that the experiences that our students have are so positive and are equitable that they are able to thrive both while they're here and once they leave our school district. So with that, I will say thank you. I'm sorry, Paige and Kim, if I went over my time. I did the best I could. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Moore. That's a lot of information for all of us to consider, which is really great. And I know that folks might have questions, but I think we're going to do the presentation from Valerie Summer, the library director, and Sharon Reynolds, the Parks and Recreation director. And then after that, we'll have question and answer, which I know you have to leave, Dr. Moore, a little bit later, but I think we'll get to question and answers before then. Okay, so handing it over.
Sorry, Kim, before you hand it over.
Yes.
The Wi-Fi slide, sorry.
Oh, well, actually, another thing. I know that there's been some questions about the video. Can we, just address the video issue? I think some people are blocked that want to have their video turned on. So.
I emailed IT about it. I don't seem to be able to do anything. So hopefully IT can help.
Who is that?
This is Paige speaking. I sent you an email, Daniel, about a few people who are having commissioners who aren't able to turn their video on. So, FYI.
Okay, I'll check.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I'll hand it over to Valerie and Sharon. And I know that in addition to the presentation that we wanted to highlight the Wi-Fi spot. So the Wi-Fi slide would be part of this presentation.
Okay, I can't show either. Can you hear me though? This is Valerie.
Yes.
Yes, hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm happy with that.
And Sharon here. So I don't think our cameras are working, but Val and I are both not disappointed about that. We'll just proceed. So good afternoon. I'm Sharon Reynolds, the Assistant City Manager and Parks and Recreation Director. So we are going to give you a very brief summary of Park and recreation, and library programs that the city offers, which support education and enrichment. It's kind of a big topic, so we're going to try and focus in on that. Just generally, just a very brief overview. So Park and Recreation provides childcare activities for seniors, aquatics, facility rentals, sports, and classes. We operate out of 5 community centers. We have 3 licensed preschools and 6 after-school sites. And we also do park and tree maintenance and facility maintenance. But we are really going to focus in today on current city programs that do promote equity. And Valerie and I are going to tag team this.
Yes, I'm Valerie Summer, the library director, and we operate out of 3 buildings. We have the main library on West Orange. We have our Grand Avenue Library on right next to City Hall. It was newly renovated and expanded in 2016. And we have our Community Learning Center on the Spruce Elementary campus, where we have after-school programs as well as a bunch of classes such as ESL classes and citizenship classes. So thank you.
So a few examples of some current city programs that promote equity. First, there is minimizing the documentation that we require for participants to be in our programs in order to reduce barriers for immigrants. The second one there is part of our core value has always been to keep fees for those programs that are fee-based as low as possible, and leveraging outside subsidies in childcare in order to reduce costs further for low-income families. I'd add there being sure that our programs are inclusive in terms of welcoming participants with special needs. And with respect to enrollment, we try to make sure, for example, for summer camp, we do a lottery and then have an in-person registration so that it's an even playing field. These programs are very highly demanded, and we want to ensure that folks with technology and without technology are on an even playing field with respect to getting access to our programs.
And both Parks and Rec and Library have staff members who reflect our community and speak diversity of languages that meet up with our participants' needs. We have also worked together on looking for grants and programs and other resources at which we can expand our services and reach out to the needs of our community members in various neighborhoods. We have a lot of touch points and a lot of patrons in common. And over the years, we have really enriched our offerings by providing free books or free food giveaways or unbelievable robust park improvements throughout the community. Several recent grants come to mind that which we work with together. We have purchased quite a number of tech tools like 3D printers that we provide walk-in for free at the libraries and as part of many Park and Rec and after-school library programs. Park and Rec had a free helmet giveaway, and just so much that we look at and see what our community needs now and what are the trending needs, what are the emerging needs that our community wants that we can help with in our city.
I might just mention here that both the library and Park and Rec, we have a Park and Recreation master plan or a strategic plan, and the library has a strategic plan, and those are available online if folks would like to do a little more research in terms of how we've identified the community need and where we'd like to go in the future.
Good point, thanks.
Okay. So this next slide, please. Thank you. Current programs that do address opportunity gaps. Again, we're just trying to narrow it down to a few here. Starting there with Park and Recreation, we offer full-day licensed preschool at 3 locations, and those operate from 7:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. There is a very high demand for preschool, and we're just going to make note here that we're hoping to add an additional site in 2021 that's been approved in the capital improvement program. Another area I wanted to mention is our after school programs, which really work very much complementary and in concert with the school district. We operate Park and Rec and the library. We operate those at actually 7 sites. Including we have 3 after-school education and safety grant-funded after-school programs at Title I elementary schools, and those we're able to provide at no cost to families. So that's been a really wonderful opportunity. And that includes, Valerie's got the Community Learning Center. The library operates that one, and Park and Rec operates Martin and Los Cerritos.
Thanks, Sharon. Many of you have seen Project Read's Learning Wheels bookmobile van touring around town. We visit the local health clinic. We go to preschools, licensed childcare, pre-K programs, and all of the many wonderful community events that Park and Rec provide. We love to spread the love of reading. We give out free books to the participants or the kids who come aboard the van. We do story times. And between the two departments, we do a lot of I&R, information referral, in our various programs, helping and working with our participants and our families to navigate the school district, navigate social services agency, get information on elections, and so much more. We've also, again, bringing up technology, we've expanded access to STEAM equipment. Sometimes it's free in the library, or we have some programs within the after-school services that provide access to robots, 3D printers, snap circuits, and so much more in the way of tech tools. Again, some of that is grant funding because we really work together in leveraging our expertise and our funds with outside grant funding.
Back one last point. On that last point about targeted in-person programming, since COVID, we have stood up really actually 5 full-day childcare programs for students that are in remote learning. And the district has been really phenomenal in making the campuses available for that. So those are full day programs where we have staff that help the kids with their technology and to make sure that they're logging in and doing their classroom activity, and then after school in the afternoon offering some enrichment and recreation and large motor activities so the kids can maintain their sanity and really by the time they get home their parents as well. I just wanted to also mention that I think a couple meetings ago you heard from the county, and the city did work very closely with the county's community collaboration for children's success and identifying what some of the community needs are with respect to our youth. Next slide, please. There we are.
Current ways of reducing barriers to participation. The library services are free, and we have had no overdue fees, no late fees for children or teens for many years, and we're working on expanding that to all ages. Parks and Recs programs are affordable, and we work together in bridging the gaps and providing some library services and programs for some of the kids who are in the programs for Parks and Recreation. We also, between the two departments, we provide multilingual preschool and family story times. At the moment, we have story times between the two of us in Cantonese, English, Spanish, Tagalog, and Portuguese. The library has had a long partnership with the Unified School District, and more recently, we have partnered also with the San Mateo County Office of Education in the Student Success Initiative. It's a nationwide initiative started by President Obama several years ago. And our goal is to issue a library card for each student in the district. And over the past couple of months, we issued over 2,000 additional library cards to new users. We've been working very, very well and hard with the teachers and the principals, and really appreciate that partnership. Thank you.
And then finally there, I think our final point, we're trying to keep ours under 10 minutes as well. Our final point there has to do with our new community center library project, Civic Campus project, which is going to be a really innovative model in that it's a co-located library and community center, which is very unusual. We have really the library and Park and Rec, our programs are complementary. So we're going to share classrooms and share facilities and collaborate on programming in that new building. It's certainly very accessible, a lot of stakeholder feedback, much community input went into the design of that facility. And I also, of course, want to mention the park. There will be a new park at this facility, and it's also very inclusive and carefully designed, and a lot of community input went into that as well. I think we had an online survey. We did in-person workshops as well, and had 400 people weigh in on what kind of playground equipment they thought this new park should have. So we're happy to answer questions as well, but I think that's kind of our brief overview of just some of the kind of equity issues that come up for us in education and enrichment for city programs. That slide on Wi-Fi, I think that was, if you'd like us to cover that, just credit to our IT department and certainly council for supporting this. We are trying to expand free Wi-Fi that's available. So you see there's City Hall, the Community Learning Center, the Municipal Services Building, our main library, and Magnolia Center. And recently, Westboro Park is the most recent addition where free Wi-Fi is provided for the public. And we're hoping to expand that. We keep adding, a site as funds allow, growing the number of areas where it's available.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, this is sort of the current context of what's happening, and wanted to spend about 10 minutes answering any questions that commissioners might have. So anything, let's see. It looks like Commissioner Mark and Commissioner Bobby.
Commissioner Vaughn can go first. Mine is more of a comment. So.
Oh, great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. My question, I can start with a comment in that I thoroughly appreciated Dr. Moore's presentation. As a graduate of the South City Unified many years ago, it makes me proud to see you in your position and doing such wonderful work. I had a couple of questions about sort of some of the data that maybe you will be looking at in the future. One of your slides mentioned how you are the district is really trying to look at data and disaggregate it. So in order to elicit any disparities. In your presentation, the disparities that you highlighted were in the area of discipline. At least that's the one that seemed most sort of clearly, a disparity laid out. I'm curious, have you discovered disparities in educational outcomes, and are those, in terms of, graduation rates, GPAs, UC eligibility, this kind of thing. And so I see you shaking your head, nodding yes, so that's great. And the other question is, when you talked about the disciplinary practices, you sort of talked about that also in terms of, at least what I heard was like staff training, making sure that there is a shared value set. And I'm wondering if you've discovered, or do you have a hypothesis as to what accounts for that disparity in discipline? And also, what accounts for the disparity that you noted? You talked about the accelerated math placement, and so you're taking a look at that and kind of how can we, get students in the right classes. So, do you have a sense for what caused or causes that kind of disparity? Why are certain students being tracked in certain coursework and others and not others? And do you have a plan, and does the plan involve training? Does it involve, actually grappling with those issues from a training standpoint?
So thank you for that very robust question, multi-pronged question. No, that's okay. So if I miss any part, please just redirect me back to it. So yeah, so we, and I was really debating how much to include in the presentation. And so what we did last year with our school board is I facilitated a session, and we looked at so much data. So access to advanced placement courses. We looked at our demographics of our students compared to our demographics with our students, or our teachers to our students, so that again, we're just trying to paint a really clear picture. It is evident when we look at our state assessment data and internal data on internal assessments that there are clear disparities in what's happening. We have, and it's across campus. Now, there is definitely, you see more disparities from educationally outcome-based from our Title I schools and the non-Title I schools, but there's still, if you unpack all of the data, you're gonna find that our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx students are not performing as well. Our African American students, and we only have a little over 1% not performing well. I think if you look at low socioeconomically disadvantaged, not performing, and when I say not performing well, I mean you can see a clear discrepancy between where some of our students are performing and others are not. And so that was really the impetus. We did a needs assessment a few years back, and I was within the district, but I did that because I wanted to be able to highlight and showcase, here's what we're doing really well, and here's some things that we need to look under the hood a little bit more and really analyze. And so we took that approach, and that really helped us to identify, and you asked, do I have any hunches? Yes. I think if we are looking at this work and coming at it from an equity lens, then we have to make sure that we are utilizing the adopted curriculum and identifying the standards for which we're going to be teaching all students. We don't get to pick and choose which standards we're going to be teaching to our students, because some kids are going to get it and some kids won't. So we identified that as an area. We hadn't spent a lot of time on our instructional framework, really looking at the pedagogy that we're using. What does great instruction look like? What does engagement look like? And so we adopted a framework that, again, we still have to train on. And so that, I think, ties into the disciplinary practices, and that was one. We saw the slide that Kim shared, and so I capitalized on that. And for us, you're asking what accounts for the disparity. So if you think back to when I said systems, and one of the systems is people. And again, I think not intentionally, I think sometimes it's unconscious bias or implicit bias that we have. And so having these conversations to even change the pathway to say, okay, well, let's really look at this. We had to have some conversations about, well, why? Why, if we look at the data and two kids got the same grade, why did this one get recommended to go into the higher level class, but this one didn't? And let's look at the demographics of the students. And so that was our entry point into it. And, you know, it's a sensitive topic. And when we start having these kinds of conversations, you know, you have to, you want to engage in a way that's sensitive and that you're not overtly calling people out, but really using data to drive the discussion. So I think that is probably the connection between the discipline practices and yes, for the training. So we started this again. It has to be systemic, and that's what I'm finding, is that we start something and it's great, and we but we do it on a Saturday, or you know, we're not able to get 100% staff. We invited a facilitator who did a great job, just very blunt, calling things out about 3 or 4 years ago, and people loved her. So then we invited her back to start doing some equity walks in our classrooms, and we got students to walk around and just tell us what you perceive and what you see. And so we took that and used that to say, okay, what do we need to do differently at our site? And so our plan now is really looking at implicit bias, cultural proficiency, because we think all of these play a role into helping people understand. And our school board is actually going through an equity network right now, because we recognize that it's going to be at a policy level. And then for me and the staff, how do we take this, train people, and help them understand the why behind it and how detrimental some of our unintended actions, words, behaviors are impacting students. And so we have outlined some trainings that we absolutely need. And to your point, yes, we can see it in our A through G rates. We can see it in our graduation rates when you look at different groups. And so for us, we're using all of that to paint the picture of why this is so urgent for us right now. I hope I captured
Thank you.
everything that you asked.
That was great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I know it's a lot of information, both in the question and the answer, so appreciate that. I think I have Mark, Norm, and then Commissioner Andrea.
Also Edith and Andrea and Kayla actually had their
Mine was more of a comment, and I'm really interested in hearing other folks' questions, but it was about the digital divide that we have that's growing because of COVID. And I know that the city and also the school district has really been kind of in the forefront to reduce the digital divide. And I appreciate all the work that Superintendent Moore and the city manager and also the council has been doing. And I didn't want to kind of gloss over the fact that we've been able to expand Wi-Fi in the city. And actually the Wi-Fi that we were trying to do was actually supposed to be a larger area. But unfortunately, because of COVID, the county took that money and reinvested it into recovery. But I can tell you, and my colleagues know this very well, that expanding Wi-Fi is something that's very important for my colleagues and also for a lot of the folks in the city. And we're going to continue to see what we can do to expand Wi-Fi through the city. And so I appreciate, again, staff's ability to expand what we have so far. But as we all know, with kiddos that we have, especially the kiddos I have, distance learning is hard. It's, not having the ability to see your classmates and your teachers in front of you, there's been a different kind of learning curve. So, and we don't want any of our kids to fall behind. And so again, this is just a comment saying that we recognize that issue, and I know both the school district and the city is trying to combat that, and we'll continue to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Norm?
I think
Commissioner Norm, you're still muted. Yeah.
Myself. First of all, Dr. Moore, thank you. Excellent presentation. I'll keep it brief because a lot of my questions were addressed when Commissioner Vaughn asked his question. I just have some just general questions. Is there a certain grade range when you start to see issues with students starting to get into that area of suspension, or to start junior high school, 9th grade? Is there any statistics on that?
Yeah, middle school, 6th grade.
Okay. And is there any commonality with the type that what causes most students to get suspension? Is it like an attendance issue, insubordination? The reason I'm asking these questions, maybe there's something we get with our programs to start nipping them in the bud before they.
No, that's a great question. So, I'd have to go back and actually pull the specifics. I know oftentimes it has to do with, at the middle school level, sometimes it's the fighting, the bickering with their peers. You don't see as egregious offenses until you typically get to the high school level, and that's where you really see the suspensions climb. But it's the fighting, some of the vaping, unfortunately, now is a big thing in middle school. And so we're working on ways to educate them on that. So I would say those are probably the top two off the top of my head, but I'll certainly go back and I can share, bring back or send to Commissioner Pat Murray, and she can share that with you so that I can actually have that data with me.
And the last point, that alternative expulsion program, that's excellent. I'd be curious if you had 14 students that didn't fulfill the expectation, which is 10%, I'd be curious why they didn't make it, and maybe you could address it for future students in that they don't fall into the same pitfalls that these 14 students did. Otherwise, thank you. Excellent presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I think I have Edith and then Andrea. Commissioner Edith?
Yes. Well, first of all, I would really want to thank for the presentations. I think they're really informative, and I appreciated the time that they put into trying to make it very concise. So I do have I wrote down, I'm very interested in the suspension rate for Latinx in San Francisco Unified. I see that 49% of the Latinos who attend, from that percentage, 63 get suspended. And I'm interested in know more about the alternative to expulsion program. When Dr. Moore mentioned that the filters were to have the students see where they would end up, I wonder if there's any way to twist that and more like showing them where they can be, right? Like more on a positive note rather than, you know, this is where I just felt it's more of a maybe negative connotation to say that if you don't behave, this is what you're going to end up. So I'm not sure about the program. I would like to know more how the expulsion program works, the same than the suspension program. And also the questions that I had was, sorry, I'm making a lot of notes here. So I wonder how the South San Francisco School District is outreaching to Spanish-speaking families, because we're talking about, again, that proportion of students who are being suspended. As some of you know, I facilitated a group, Padres en Acción, that is now moving into Familias Tomando Acción. I invited them to attend this meetings. They're not able to attend because there's a language barrier. Yesterday, I attended to the Special Education Committee at the South San Francisco Unified School District. The Zoom had a button where they can translate, and they also had you know, they were able to automatically listen in their language. So I wonder if that's something that this commission can also have. And that's taken into consideration, again, related with the school district. So in order for a lot of these families to understand the system, we're going to have to reach them out in their first language, right? So I wonder, that's one of my questions. My other question is also if we know that there's an implicit bias maybe present, and we ask why is this happening? What are the actions that happens after that discussion? So it's great that discussion is happening, but what are the actions? Is there any immediate actions that are going to be taken because we know that there might be an implicit bias? I feel that the training for the staff is going to take some time, and meanwhile we might be losing some of these students because some of this presentation, what I read was elementary school, middle schools. What about the students who are in high school and they only have 2-3 years or maybe 1 year to exit our school district? One of the questions about how does South San Francisco Unified is addressing issues of domestic violence, depression, language barriers in the family. And I'm talking about the family, the parents who are raising these children, who in consequence are going to show their what you're seeing, a lot of suspensions, because, you know, the comment was that there's fights, they're vaping, are we trying to reach out to those families for them to understand and somehow have a way to engage them positively? And I'm saying this because I have tried it in a very small group, in a very small way, but I feel that the district will be capable of doing that and also promoting Spanish-speaking support groups that are in the community, as the one that the Community Learning Center has for Familias Fuertes. These are Spanish-speaking families who get together once a month, but it's hard for them to promote and make others know. So the district should know about that. Same then, like I said, Familias Tomando Acción is another Spanish-speaking support group that is going to start being a nonprofit. And I feel that just like those started, many more could start within the school district, as well as the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Andrea.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Dr. Moore, for that presentation. It's interesting to read this data and see it and see your presentation on it. And it feels like not too long ago, I was a student myself within this the school district here in South City. And, you know, I think one of the first things that came to mind, and I don't know if this is part of a separate presentation or if it's something that's even in some of the framework that you mentioned that you recently adopted, but if there's any work being done around incorporating kind of a more culturally inclusive curriculum that makes students feel like not only are they seeing more staff members and teachers that come from similar backgrounds as them or represent, you know, minorities or communities of color, right? Because, like, for example, I didn't realize those experiences were valid and they were a real thing until I think almost the end of my undergraduate studies at San Jose State. And I think it was when I was sitting there thinking, like, for so long I never saw a teacher that looked like me or even had a last name that my parents could pronounce, right? Because it wasn't someone I identified with culturally, and English wasn't my first language. And so just a lot of those experiences, just because I was kind of a self-motivated student, I was able to somewhat make it through. But I think of so many of my classmates who were crying out for help, and instead were acting out in ways that are seen as behavioral issues or disciplinary issues, right? But in reality, it's these students that are crying out, asking for help, and they're not receiving it in the way that they need it. Like I can tell you so many instances at South City High where, unfortunately, some of them are maybe now incarcerated, some of them didn't make it, some of them are no longer alive. And so, you know, things like that worry me, and it's not, you know, for the sake of my generation, but for future generations. And so I think back to the topic around mental health and the increased services that you mentioned that there are. I know that our district missed the deadline to apply for the state grant that was given to the San Mateo County Office of Education. Is there any, I don't know if there's anything being done to address that or find a way in which our district can maybe even get some remaining grant money or anything, because I think that that would really be beneficial. And it's really unfortunate that our district missed it when I think we really, really need it. And then also I was curious too, around the point on the mental health coordinator that is, I don't know if they're hired already or if they are in the process of that, but is that person or that team only going to be open to special ed students and their families, or is this something that's going to be implemented on a greater scale to all students, regardless of their classification in special ed or not? So just really wanted to speak to those points. Thank you.
Thank you for all of that. I will be brief, I promise. So culturally inclusive curriculum, yes. Is culturally responsive or relevant curriculum, yes, that is on our radar. And yes, it is something that we weren't fortunate that we were in the middle of a pandemic, but we've been able to set up our schedule in such a way where we have time to actually provide professional development now. One of our barriers is that we only had 2 professional development days and we added a third. So that's 3 days out of an entire year to train 100% of your staff. And so what we've tried to do now is how do we leverage the time where we're doing asynchronous learning where we're engaging teachers in professional development to start doing some training across the board. And you talked about, yes, it is absolutely unfortunate about the mental health grant. And what we are doing, just to speak on that, is that we've designated staff so that they are going to be engaged in any type of information that comes out of our San Mateo County Office of Education. But we also are looking at ways, and we're fortunate because we are able to still attend the trainings, still have access to mental health support, trauma-informed practices, and they're doing some resiliency training. And so we have access to that. And we are working with the county as we speak. Actually, we had a meeting earlier this week to talk about what might that look like. And our team is getting together this Friday to flesh out where are some natural entry points for us where we can really leverage this in order to ensure that we can get it to our community. And so for the mental health coordinator, it's going to start right now. They're overseeing special ed, but what I can tell you is that our special education department works very closely with our student services department, and they are the 2 that are actually focusing on the county level for mental health. And so they will be the conduit to the district so that we're gathering information so that we are participating. So though the mental health coordinator starts there, remember we also have mental health counselors that we work with through YMCA. And so that's on the student services side. So eventually what ideally we'd like for it to be like that, so that it's services for all, but I imagine one person can't do it all. And so we may have to first start, see how it goes, monitor implementation, what's working well, what's not. And then if we need to grow the program, then that would be something that we'd be open to exploring.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, well,
sorry.
Yeah, quick, go ahead.
It's just really quick. Is the support that we're receiving from the County Office of Education and the training that's still available, even though we didn't get the grant. Is that also for teachers and staff, or is it just the administrators?
No, I mean, we hope our administrators will also be attending. That we have to lead the work, so we should be present. But it is for staff, it's for counselors. It's not specific to just administrators. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have 3 more questions, which I'm hoping are brief because we want to get you to looking at the example approaches, but I think this conversation is so rich, really in appreciating the questions. They're very thoughtful. So Commissioner Kayla, I think you're up next.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dr. Moore, for your presentation. It's clear that you have the right vision and are implementing all the right, best practices like social emotional learning and restorative justice. So my question is, how can we support you? How can this commission accelerate your success? What resources do you need? Where do you need more attention, etc.?
I love that question. Wow. So I think one, just by nature of this group, that we are calling out that there are inequities that exist, and it is beyond time for us to really work together to address them. I think if we get people who want to have a seat at the table, so when we start our committee, we'll reach out, because it'd be great to have a wider representation that can participate in this work as well. I think sharing ideas and insights, things we don't proclaim to know exactly everything, and so we appreciate when we get different divergent perspectives that we haven't thought about, especially if we're involved in organizations where we see this has worked really well, this is what they've done, this is the way that they entertained this, or it took an entry point into that, would be really great. I have to think about the resources part, because I hadn't even, that wasn't anything I thought would have been asked. But training is just critical for us. And I think when we think of the digital divide, as someone mentioned earlier, and I love that the city is working on city Wi-Fi, that would be huge for our community. To just be able to fully engage, because we are giving hotspots, but if you have 4, 5, 6 kids, and they're all trying to be on one hotspot, we've now given multiple hotspots, it still presents a challenge. And so I think having these types of conversations in such a productive and professional way is really important. And now, to Edith's point, yes, what action steps are we going to take? And again, we're really proud of the excitement, because we have people, we have some facilitators. PCRC is going to be working specifically at South San Francisco High School, because we recognize, sometimes we have to prioritize the needs. And so we've launched into that. We have a plan in place to do that, but we need to do more of that work. And so as I think of additional resources, I'll happily return so I can share with the commission. Thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. Okay, Commissioner Hermes, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Superintendent and directors Valerie, Sharon, and Moore, thank you for the presentation. Great information. Just a suggestion, if you can add to your projects, and if you can please include the Old Town area for example, a movie evening. I know the city has wonderful programs on the Orange Park, but just suggestion to make one in our Old Town area, perhaps on our main corridor area, wherever is available, Cypress Park or the green area that we have in Pine and Linden. It'd be great, and that we can start that way to engage the youth and the families. That could be expanded to maybe another integration coming, maybe the library with a mobile book. But we can start something with a movie evening. That'd be great to have it in our community and expand it from that point. Maybe just another idea to maybe the Martin School has a folkloric dancing group that they could participate, but something that we can bring to the community, and all these wonderful projects that you have, we can actually put it on the streets.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hermes. I think I have Chair Nicholas up next.
Thank you, Dr. Moore and Valerie and Sharon for those excellent presentations. Dr. Moore, because of the pandemic effect, I'm sure it has been thought about too before, that there could be children who are affected or are now homeless. And because you're the first point that they will contact, do you have any support system for these homeless kids? And do you really identify them? Because in the past they were saying that they were not counted accurately. And in terms of resources, that's also one of the things that I would like to ask. You know, there had been resources sometimes that are not fully utilized. And like, for example, the South San Francisco Chamber of Commerce Higher Education Scholarship Program, which is annually giving graduating high school seniors or residents of South San Francisco scholarship for college. And in the past, they have more than 70 scholars. Right now, or the last one, they only had 30 because we were in shelter in place. So if we have someone who will be reaching out to the school district, who will this be? And so also, I would like to inform you that in February 2020, Mayor Garbarino and I, as members of the Community Development Block Grant Standing Committee, we allocated funds for the first time to two nonprofits that we hope would benefit our youth in South San Francisco. One is United Way Bay Area, and this group is supposed to help our youth prepare for the increasingly competitive workforce. They provide underserved youth in our community job training and placement. They also hold Youth Career Expo to help bridge the opportunity gap. We also funded Friends for Youth, and this matches adult volunteers such as one-to-one mentoring for kids aged 8 to 17. And they also have the school-based group mentoring for those transitioning from middle school to high school, which, like you said, the middle school children are the ones who really get in trouble. So maybe these are things, we are funding this. So it's a very opportune time for you to tap into these resources too. But if there's anything else that we can help, we care for the children of South San Francisco.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is great.
So just for the homeless, yeah.
I
just want to know how we reach out to those kids who could be affected by homelessness.
So our first point of contact is for the student or their parent to notify the site principal so that we can develop an individual plan for them to support them. We can connect them to resources that we have. So if they say, well, you know, we're no longer going to be able to drive and get to school, then we offer bus passes. If we're struggling food insecure, then, you know, we have programs here where we're giving food for free. And so they typically go through our student services department. So that is the point of contact for our kiddos, but we do ask that they let us know, and of course it's discreet and we don't widely advertise who those kiddos are, but part of it is just talking to them to identify what resources might you need, and then we're able to act as a conduit to connect them to the different resources. And thank you for all the information on United Way and I think you said Friends to Youth. I'll follow up so I can get more information on that.
Friends for Youth.
Friends for Youth.
Okay, great. So I think Commissioner Vanessa, you're up.
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick question about data about educational success of children and their family involvement and like family involvement in child's education and studying with language barriers or socioeconomic barriers. And then I was also curious if we're utilizing the new technology and the new connections that we're making that unfortunately because of COVID, we're making with these children who are having to do online learning by sending multilingual information packets or, you know, flyers to the children, to the families who now are reading these things, that's linking them to new services and libraries and parks and recs and all those programs. Thank you.
So is your question, how are we engaging families?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the engagement of families is in the data of the success of the students. So are they marginalized by not having family members who are actively engaged in helping with the studies? And then if we're utilizing the new way of interacting with parents to make sure that parents are receiving information about services that are available to them.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that we've tied, I think all of our parents are of course, value education and want to be involved. I think what's helped us through this is we restructured one of our divisions, and we now have a community liaison position, and that specifically, as well as we've had community liaison positions at the school sites. And so we often send information out in English and Spanish. Those are our highest languages served here in the school district. That's not to say we don't have many others. And we utilize our community liaisons as supports and conduits to the families as well, to call, to keep in touch, to check in, to notify them of information. One of the things we did when we were reaching out via technology for our survey is to find out, do you need a device? And we were at about 40–45% rate. And so what I did was I pulled a team together, inclusive of some of our community liaisons, and we started calling our families. And last I checked, it was a week or two ago, we're at 85% because we're actually having conversations with them. The other thing that because we're asking also, what's the best way? What makes the most sense for us trying to connect with you? Is it a flyer home? Is it a phone call? And one of the things that we learned is that many if it's a voicemail, they prefer that versus a long email, or if it's a short flyer, that also is something. So we're trying to tailor our communications based on the feedback that we're getting from our families.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So our last comment for this piece, and this went a little over 10 minutes, but I think it was well worth it. So Commissioner Mark.
Thank you. I'll be brief. The chair, Madam Chair Flora Nicholas, actually brought up one of my questions about homelessness for our students. I guess the concern I have, the fear and the stigma of being a homeless student. And I guess maybe you kind of touched about it, but maybe you can talk to us about it again. Is how do you break that wall to let students know that it's okay to come and receive those services? Because I've talked to several students who've either have moved away and because of whatever economic issues, or they're homeless and they haven't told anyone because they're scared of letting their teachers know and their friends know and the administration know. So just breaking that wall to say that it's okay, it's something I'm really interested in. And then Dr. Moore mentioned about e-cigarettes, and this is like another example of partnership between the school district and the city, is that, we in the city recognize that e-cigarettes were targeting minorities and people of color. And this city stepped up and banned the sale of e-cigarettes in the general stores because we recognized that the damage it was doing to our student population. And I know that Trustee Eddie Flores was a big vocal person about passing a resolution. And I know the school district also is part of the lawsuit in terms of against Juul. And so there is that collaboration where the school district sees something and the city council sees something where we can work together and trying to improve our community. So I wanted to mention that.
So I appreciate that. I think what we need to do is do a little bit more outreach in terms of talking to students and letting them know. I know oftentimes if they don't go to their principal or the teacher, especially at the secondary level, they have really good relationships with their counselors, so they'll notify them of that. And just to go back to the question that was asked earlier, we have set aside $10,000 in our local control accountability plan specifically for our homeless students. And so it's another way to provide the resources. And so to your point, I think, what do we do to help remove that stigma? I think we found out oftentimes because the parent has told us or the student has come forward, but if we have some kiddos who are nervous and embarrassed, then we need to find other ways to eliminate that as a barrier so that we can get them clothing, food, transportation, whatever it is that they need.
Thank you. We've covered so many different topics and really appreciate the depth of both the comments, the questions, and the responses. So thank you so much for that. Dr. Moore, I'm trying to remember when you have to leave. Isn't it pretty soon?
Yeah, 5:45. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. We're so happy to have you the time that we did. I did want to see if we could possibly just have Paige present the example approaches that we're considering, just so you see those. And I think, Paige, you're getting that ready, it looks like. And you're muted.
Just realized that. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. Right. So like in the other topics, we wanted to make sure that we have kind of some range of approaches that were sent out to commissioners on Friday that go into the categories of the levers of change. So policies, programs, and practices, which align with 3 of the 5 areas that SSF-USD is using to address inequities. And we want to make sure that the potential approaches that we have will both result in longer term change and shorter term change. So reducing barriers to educational achievement or opportunity and increasing educational achievement outcomes. And then in the long term, improving quality and diversity of educational opportunities overall available to communities of color. And then these are the 5 approaches that we are starting with. Again, we're not making any decisions tonight, and we'll be talking about them more in a moment, but these are at least a good starting point, I think, to talk about possible ways to address inequities. You'll see that some of them address early childhood education, which is really a key impact point, has a lot of impact throughout a child or a young person's learning and school trajectory. And I know that some of the other approaches commissioners have mentioned already, or Dr. Moore's mentioned, and many of these things do exist in some level and potentially could be expanded. Kim, back to you.
Yeah. So I think, again, so, you know, the idea of these approaches actually reflect a lot of what we've just heard in the conversation. So supporting low income and students of color in attendance and participation during and post-distance learning. So the hotspots, I think, fits in here, really reaching out in the ways that Dr. Moore is talking about to understand the many factors that affect student engagement and attendance. We also heard one of the commissioners and in the conversation related to expanding ethnic studies and culturally responsive practices and content in standard school curricula. We also are considering, as an example approach, as Paige was saying, one that we know a lot of data points to investment in early childhood education has incredibly positive results later in life. So number 3, implement universal preschool and pre-K. Number 4, construct another licensed preschool facility in the Westboro neighborhood. I think that's underway. The concept and approach is being considered currently. And then something we heard from Community Collaboration for Children's Success related to expanding free and affordable outside of school enrichment programs in support of youth leadership development and kind of teen engagement in a range of ways. So, you know, as we were saying, the levers of change, we see a range of them: policies, programs, and practices represented in this series of examples. But also wanted to just open it up again to hear from you all what you think about these approaches and how they resonate for you. Looks like Commissioner Mark. Oh, you're on.
I'm unmuted. Sorry about that. I'm excited about the prospects of our city becoming the first city in San Mateo County to have universal preschool and pre-K, because more children could have access to higher quality education. This is something that I know that the council and the staff have been talking about for quite some time now. Universal preschool and pre-K allows children, we all know this, of all social and economic and racial backgrounds, the opportunity to attend well-designed, high-quality preschool and pre-K. This means children who may otherwise have been at a disadvantage can receive the same kindergarten readiness as any other student. And so I'm excited about that prospect. I'm also, something that I'm also really excited about is continuing to build more pre-K locations throughout South San Francisco. There's definitely a need for it. I think staff can probably talk about this. I mean, we did a heat map in terms of the demand, and it was all over South San Francisco in terms of where families are located, in terms of the demand for pre-K and preschool. And so this is something my colleagues know, and a lot of people know I'm passionate about. I think all of us are passionate about early education, how making sure our kiddos have the right start. And so I'm supportive of all these kind of recommendations, and especially universal pre-K and building more facilities to help our kiddos. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Kayla.
Yeah, I also like the universal pre-K. I'm curious why the Westboro neighborhood was picked for the additional facility. I know it has one of the lower populations of Latinx families and kids, which is higher need. So I know there's like maybe more demand in that neighborhood, but should we think about building where there's more need, and the demand might come naturally once it's there? I don't know who the right person to answer that question is. But.
Sharon here. I can speak to that a little bit. So currently in the Old Town area, we have Seebecker Preschool, and we also have Little Steps Preschool at the Community Learning Center. So, and in the Westboro area, we have preschool at Westboro. But we did do an analysis of all the folks who are on our waiting list, and the heat map that Councilmember Nogales is speaking about was very heavily concentrated in the Westboro area. So it's true that it's a very predominantly Asian population. So there's great need across town, not just in one demographic. It's really all over town. So we need spaces everywhere. But the Westboro area was selected based on the number of people in the waiting list, specifically in the Westboro area.
And then Sharon, it's also not just because if you live in Westboro, you go to Westboro. I mean, you can go to Seebecker, which is across town. You know, it's just, you know, whenever there's an open spot, you know, this is the issue. So.
Okay, Commissioner Edith.
Just wanted to confirm, but this is not free preschool, right? So that also means that it's people who can afford to get into the waitlist because they'll be able to pay. Just out of, you know, after your comments, that just came out to my mind. That's just a comment. But now I'm also very excited about the implementation of a universal preschool, because then that means that it's going to be, you know, hopefully those who, there might be parents, and again, I'm going back into the Latinx community where they're not able to get a job, right? Get out of the house as a mother. So I'm a mother of 3. So I cannot put my name on the list because I'm taking care of my own kids because I don't have the ability to pay for preschool. So I stay home, and then I can put my name in the list. So I'm excited about that. I've seen these 5 approaches to reduce the racial inequities. I think also, I feel like it's missing the family perspective. Like, what about resources where we support parents, right? So that might go back into this, maybe preschools, but also like meeting parents and families where they're at. So, right, with this commission, we're talking about social equity. So what about those parents who are not able to because their immigration status, again, language barriers, cannot access some of these programs, or cannot access, you know, again, maybe a licensed preschool, which, you know, is not going to be free right now, right? So it charges, or participation in certain programs. So very excited about number 5 too, to extend free and affordable, because a lot of these families are looking for tutors, are looking for activities for their children to do after school.
Edith, if I could just mention that the preschool that is at the Community Learning Center is funded through the Big Lift, and it actually is on a sliding scale, and many of those families are in that program at no cost, but it's limited. I mean, clearly it would be awesome if that was available to more families, but the framework, the concept, I think, is there in terms of, and it's taken a lot of funding partners. So Silicon Valley Community Foundation, the County of San Mateo, it is quite, it's ambitious, but it would be a fantastic thing. So I'm with you on that.
Does he have a waiting list too?
At this moment during COVID, it does not. So
before
it did, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Pat, and then we're going to move to see if there's any approaches that we want to maybe gather more information sooner as opposed to later. Go ahead.
Hi, I also like 3 and 5. Number 3, implementation of a universal preschool or pre-K. You know, if we're looking at things through an equity lens, we have to look at everybody coming into school with, you know, able to learn at the same level. And if they're starting at a deficit, if all students aren't coming in, you know, some families don't have the resources, or they don't have the time to give to children. And so if we have a universal preschool, pre-K, we're really doing a lot for equity. And if we're talking about systemically, that is, you know, where it's at. Number 5, I know a lot of families that couldn't put their kids into activities and sports. And as Dr. Moore said, middle school is the time when 6th grade in particular is a time when they start, you know, start having problems. And if we could have, you know, some sort of leadership development and programs, you know, especially for teenagers starting from 6th grade, I think that we would be helping systemically to right some of our wrongs.
Commissioner Murray, just one thing I might mention is we do have the middle school sports program at
Right.
all of the South San Francisco Unified School District. It's open to all students, but it certainly is not an end-all be-all, but it is, I think it's a good start in the kind of model that we could look to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's not free, but I think folks should understand that we really, I don't think children are ever turned away for lack of funding. So if a family really does not have the resources to put their child in any of our programs, staff are very, have the discretion to work out either a payment plan or a fee waiver. We have Friends of Park and Rec. So again, it doesn't help everybody, but it's something we could build on.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Commissioner Bobby, you'll be the last comment before we move into the next phase. Oh, Commissioner Chair Nicholas as well. Go ahead.
Right, at the risk of being a dissenting voice against universal preschool, which is not what I'm going to say, but what I'm thinking is, and it's sort of piggybacking on Kayla's, Commissioner Kayla's point is, you know, if we get into this sort of rising tide lifts all boats, I think we run the risk of, and we've got universal elementary school and we still have racial disparities. We've got universal high school. We still have racial disparities in education. So I'm a little bit concerned that unless we implement universal preschool in an anti-racist way with the proper training in the proper neighborhoods, intentionally targeting the communities that need it, I'm concerned that it won't actually go to addressing disparities except for the fact that I'm sure there's research that would suggest universal preschool, does have, educational benefits. I get that. But if our goal is to really shrink that disparity, universal solutions, by their very nature, in a society that's got sort of endemic systemic racism, a universal solution isn't going to solve that. So I just want to make sure that when we think about these universal approaches that apply to everyone, that they're implemented and thought through, and that we're very intentional about how they are going to address the specific needs of communities of color. So that is, I think that's my only caveat too. And so then the last thing is, I'm being brief here. The ethnic studies culturally responsive one, I like because it has the potential to, for South City to be an exemplar in this field and sort of be able to say, look, we do ethnic studies, culturally responsive education in a way that nobody on the peninsula is doing, that no one in Northern California. I mean, I think there's some really exciting possibilities with that approach.
Thank you. Chair Nicholas.
Yeah, so I'm also going to be very brief. I would just like to address what Edith has said about, educating also the parents, because as we all know, the parents are the first teachers of their children. And so therefore it's really important to also, part of this education is to support the parents. And part of that is to meet them where they are, like you said, Commissioner Arias. I really would like to see an expansion on reaching out to the parents and making sure that we understand what they need. And that goes, maybe it could be included in any one of this, like for example, maybe the expansion of the ethnic studies. I think that will be something also that we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we're now at the point of reviewing if any commissioner would like to bring forward one of these approaches or two to move forward and investigate immediately. Again, we're not making any final decisions today, but based on what you've heard, is there any one of those that you feel like you'd want to move forward? So Commissioner Edith. Oh, you're on mute. Go ahead and unmute you. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you said just one or two?
I think we'll consider one or two, yeah. So,
okay. So
if there's one that you want to put forward.
Number 5 and 3. I'm sorry, number 5 and 2.
Okay. So we're considering perhaps number 5 and number 2, Commissioner Pat, and then Commissioner Mark.
I'd like to move forward number 3 and to look at universal preschool done in an equitable way. As Commissioner Bobby said, we do have in our school district, we do have an ethnic studies, we have ethnic studies classes. We're looking to expand in the near future. So, but right now we've expanded. We started with one a couple of years ago and we've expanded. I don't remember off the top of my head how many we have, but you know, we're also, we're looking to expand possibly to the lower grades as well. Right now it's only high school. So that would be a good thing as well.
Any other last comments? So it looks like we're considering number 5, number 2, and number 3. Commissioner Gladys.
This is just more of a question. How do we can make sure that we're explicit about the inclusion of parents? I just want to make sure that it's included in one. I'm not really sure of which one, but how that can be included. Because I personally think that that is actually really important to include parents.
And are you speaking specifically to approach number 2, this one, or?
Yeah, I'm not really sure if it's
I was going to add it to all
expansion of
3 since
ethnic
we'll be
studies. I'm not
investigating.
really sure if that's the way, but I think for Latinx families, it's really important to include parents in the education. Whether it is, I'm not really sure if it's about educating parents about ethnic studies, but it's the inclusion of parents in any initiative. So not sure on
Great.
which one.
So I think Paige is actually adding that additional language, both from Commissioner Bobby about being explicitly anti-racist, as well as making sure to very clearly include parents and families. It looks like, Paige, you're doing that with all 3 of them. Is that right? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so a couple more comments. I think Commissioner Mark?
Yeah, I think for approach number 4, is that the Westboro one? I think we need to expand a little bit. Maybe it's Westboro and other neighborhoods, because right now, yes, the heat map shows that there's a large need in the Westboro area, but we all know there's a huge wait list right now for families to sign up. And so one facility isn't going to solve the problem. We have to continue to build more facilities. And one of the things that we forgot to mention is that the city has a child care impact fee, which is through development. And so whenever we have new development, we get dollars from that to put in a fund to potentially build more child care facilities. In fact, one of the new R&D development, Biomed Realty, is going to pay about $6 to $7 million in child care impact fees, which we can use to build more facilities. So just because it says Westboro, I don't think we just stop there. I think we have to continue to build. Just because even if we have universal pre-K, I mean, we still have to build more facilities throughout the city. So I just kind of want to throw that approach as well to show that, yes, there's a need in one neighborhood, but there's a need for the entire city as well. So I think if we reframe it in a way that Westboro and then other neighborhoods I think is fine as well. Because right now the CIP does say Westboro right now to build based upon the data that we've been provided. But again, just because if we decide to go forward with Westboro doesn't mean we stop there with that approach.
Okay. So I do want to get to listening to community members, but maybe we'll take one more comment from Commissioner Kayla.
Yeah, I guess kind of a clarification point on universal pre-K. Like, wouldn't we by definition have to build more facilities to accomplish that? So like, are 3 and 4 kind of the same thing? I don't want to like split the vote if
Sure.
You know,
so,
they're essentially the same.
So we've kind of talked about this, and staff can try and jump into it. It's a public-private partnership that we're looking at in terms of doing universal pre-K. So it would involve biotech, businesses, everyone involved to kind of pitch in financially to do this. Because it is a heavy lift where the city could potentially participate financially, but you know, the number of people that are going to be asking for this, we will need everyone involved. And I think that's why it's a conversation piece to have. It's a conversation to have with businesses and like biotech to say, you know, we know that your employees who will be living here are going to be looking for quality pre-K and preschool. But you know, you have to buy in as well to participate and help us out in terms of building that. Does that mean they build facilities on their site where now individuals who potentially live in South San Francisco cannot use their facilities? That's part of the conversation. And so I think it's a conversation piece we all should be talking about.
And just to clarify, we're not making any final decisions today. Right. So I think, you know, really it's just which of these, if any, approaches do we want to find out more about sooner than later? And then we can continue to revisit. And so I think, like in the past, we'll go through the top 2 of the 3 that have been proposed. Is that what you're highlighting, Paige? Oh, there's 4 now. Okay, so enthusiastic group here. And again, we're not taking anything off. I think we're just trying to figure out at this point, because there's a lot to do, which ones we want to find out more information about. So going back to, should we start with number 2?
And again, yes, we'll do slide by slide. We'll give folks a few seconds to raise their hands. We'll take a screenshot. We will go to the next one when we lower hands.
Okay, so again, looking for commissioner votes just to move things forward on gathering more information related to approach number 2, expanding ethnic studies and culturally responsive practices related to school curricula with explicit engagement and inclusion of parents and families. So if you would like to move that forward to find out more information, go ahead and put your hand up now. You're going to vote for 2 of these, ultimately. Okay, so we're moving on to the next approach. Yes, implement universal preschool and pre-K in an anti-racist way with targeted sites and with explicit inclusion of parents and families. Go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to move forward gathering information on this. A few more minutes.
Well, a few more seconds.
Seconds.
Next.
Okay, did you get that? And now we're at number 4. So approach focused on constructing another licensed preschool facility, perhaps in the Westboro, but also other neighborhoods in an anti-racist way with targeted sites and explicit inclusion of parents and families. So go ahead and raise your hand if you're interested in finding out more about that approach. Okay. And almost finished there.
Hold on, sorry, one more person raised their hand, so moment.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And now related to approach number 5, expand free, affordable outside of school enrichment programs and support youth leadership development, especially for teenagers in an anti-racist way with specific sites and explicit inclusion of parents and families. Okay. Last few seconds. Got that, Paige?
Yes. So it looks like 2, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that approach 2 and 3 will be the ones that we'll start to investigate.
Agree. Approach number 2 and approach number 3 received the most votes by commissioners.
Right. So again, we'll be moving forward on this. We'll give you some updates as we gather information. but we're not making any decisions on taking anything off the list at the moment. So thank you very much, commissioners. Now we want to open up and hear from our community members who have joined us this afternoon. And page, there we go. Okay, so I think we'll start with community member Russell. Just a couple comments. We do allow for 2 minutes per speaker, and we're going to be asking if a particular person comes back with a comment. We're going to ask if there's any other comments from anybody we haven't heard, just to make sure that we are able to listen to as many folks as possible.
Sorry,
okay.
Actually, Lisa will be tracking who's spoken, so people will only be able to provide public comment once. But folks can still email, and we encourage people to email for sure. And raise your hand if you want to join the queue. We'll call your name, or if you're calling in by phone, you can dial *9, and we will call you by the last 4 digits of your phone number.
Yeah, and so just to underline that we will be inviting folks, again, as Paige said, to submit any information or experiences that you want to, ideas, approaches that you want us to consider, thoughts about the approaches we just talked about, in addition to being able to comment via the email. So looking forward to hearing from you. Let's start with community member Russell.
Yes, Russell, you've been unmuted. You may be able to speak now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for having my comment. I'd like to, first of all, acknowledge before I get to the school equity discussion, is to acknowledge that both commissioners, Lily and Chaska, knew the importance of this education meeting, but could not attend respectively because of hostility of attacks at the last meeting on policing, as well as school-related issues. This is why each of them delegated alternative members to represent the groups of interest that the council would think were relevant to this commission, like the City's Youth Advisory Council, which I am on, and Change SSF. But citing city procedure, Chairwoman and City Council member Nicholas prevented this. Despite what the procedure is, not allowing the representations of our youth and community to be at this meeting is reproducing the same barriers of inequity that this commission is tasked to address. Okay, so like getting into the actual thing that I want to talk about is school lunch. I'd like to respectfully ask if the school board could provide data on the percentage of kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch and who are actually receiving that food during COVID, as well as the data before pre-COVID. As you may or may not know, food is very important to all aspects of our lives. And to be frankly, being like an SSF USD alumni, pizza is not lunch. Like, I loved pizza. I loved eating that $2 slice of pizza. Like, it was like my calories for the day, but that was not lunch. We need lunch that is both healthy, but also like tasty. Like, my friend who qualified for free lunch would, you know, pick at his food and sometimes like throw his food away because it just wasn't good. Like, he would get food from vending machines, or he would get food from, and not to out any teachers, but like teachers who sold food at lunch, like ramen. And that's not an environment that is just like reproduces all the inequities that school is trying to solve. And we need plant proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Next up, I think, is Eddie.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So I just want to second what Russell was saying in the beginning. Both of those people that were not allowed to speak are alumni of the South San Francisco Unified School District. So if we're going to have a discussion on this, this district and our education in our city, why are we barring people that are part of that system? All right, so getting on to my comment here. I'm an alumni of El Camino High School and Alta Loma Middle School, and I kind of wanted to speak on some of the comments I heard about the preschool. I think it's convenient that they say that the discussion on universal pre-K has been going on for years, but actually, and right now, it's right before an election where the mayor's top opponent for his election was the one that brought up universal pre-K. So I think that's actually the reason it's being discussed. And I just want to propose my theory of why it's in Westboro as opposed to in East South San Francisco, when the whole presentation was about how the greatest need is among Latinx communities, which are in the highest concentration in East South San Francisco. Westboro Park is Mark Nagals' district. So this is just politics that are going on in South San Francisco. So I think that's the reason that was pushed there. And then also that brings up the question, who Councilman Floor, who represents District 5, which is East South San Francisco, why didn't she advocate for this for her constituents? Mark Nagals even brought up that there's development fees, childcare fees generated from the construction and development. This primarily happens in East South San Francisco, yet the preschool is chosen for Westboro. This makes no sense. And just getting back to kind of the whole deal, I hear Genentech constantly, Genentech this, Genentech that. Maybe if we didn't give them tax breaks, we wouldn't have to accept their donations to prop up our education system in the first place. I was just reading an article that Genentech has sued the county, a serial suer of the county's tax office, trying to avoid taxes. So why are we giving them good PR when we could just not help them out and just support our schools directly with our own money? Thank you.
Before we go to the next person, I just wanted to mention that we did expand the idea of constructing another licensed preschool into not just the Westboro, but considering other neighborhoods. So I think that is one way that we're continuing to build on existing needs assessments that have been used to inform that plan. So thank you for bringing up the broad need related to that. I think next up is Aristel.
Hello, could you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm an educator at South Unified School District. Yeah, I'm actually surprised about the concern brought up about the not having alternates. I think that's something.
We're having there's a little bit of background. We're not able to hear you very clearly.
Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that I was somewhat concerned about the lack of not having alternates, and I think that's something that we need to that the commission should reflect on deeply in terms of really living up to this idea of equity. I wanted to comment on ethnic studies and expanding ethnic studies. As someone who is in frequent conversations with experts at SF State, who has majored and got a master's in equity and social justice, as well as teach ethnic studies for a number of years in South City High School, I think it's important we expand and also support ethnic studies in a way that is authentic and in a way that's genuine. I do not, and I want to caution against creating a curriculum that reduces people's cultures to nothing more than dances, costumes, and giving them a shout out on February. I think we need to root it in sociology. We need to root it in civic engagement, activism, social movements, indigenous philosophy. And SF actually has a really good model of what that looks like. Ethnic studies does not even goes beyond just history. We need to reflect on what ethnic studies looks like in the English classroom, in a science classroom, mathematics classroom, in the authors we read, in the experiences we talk about, and the ideas and who we give credit to in terms of the ideas. A lot of this also is echoed with restorative justice practices. When we talk about restorative justice practices and you go to different school districts, you get different results. We need to be committed about funding it and supporting it so that we have authentic shifts in students and not trying to game suspension numbers as I've seen in different districts.
Thank you. So lifting up the types of ethnic studies programming to make sure that it's authentic and civically minded, and then also thinking about restorative justice practices. Okay, Caleb, you're up next.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, just as Mr. Dela Cruz was saying, in terms of the ethnic studies, I'm currently an attending student at SSFHS. I heard a lot about ethnic studies, but I for sure feel like we could expand it a lot more, because what I've learned from just being in the history class is it's a lot of history from a white person, what seems like a white person's perspective. And I think it's really important to get the perspective of other people's culture. That's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caleb. We have JT up next. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, great. I'm a South City resident and a Bay Area educator for the last 16 years, and I just want to share a couple observations, right? So I see some foci that you guys are looking at, making some decisions, and what I notice is a conversation in a racial equity task force talking about everything but race. And I see an avoidance of talking about race. And I understand that because we're in a very white-centered structure. And when we talk about race, we're going to upset white people, which I understand is a part of the process. So I want to push you all past your comfort zones to be thinking about how do you center who we're talking about centering, our marginalized students of color. Racial equity is more than mental health, better discipline, and special education. These are reactive measures, right? It is about decolonizing the curriculum. Ethnic studies is a piece of that. It's about training staff on how to be anti-racist, and it's about getting rid of racist testing metrics that have never worked for us. Governor Newsom just signed a bill requiring CSU students to take ethnic studies. Students shouldn't have to wait until they get to college to get there. And I implore you all to use your privilege at this seat, not to push for your constituencies, but to push for the folks who can't be at this table, who can't be in your seats, right? You're not voting for your constituency. You're voting for the folks who don't have the access to say what they actually need in their schools, in their community, right? So yes, that's going to upset white people. That's going to upset people with privilege, right? But that is if you're talking about being anti-racist, that is what's being asked of you. Ethnic studies is a piece of that. There are a lot of other pieces, but we have to shift people's mindsets so they are looking at things, yes, from an anti-racist background and decentering whiteness and white privilege for the upliftment and empowerment of folks of color. Thank you.
Thank you, JT. Let's hear from Tamara.
Hi, can you hear me okay? I'm actually in Westboro Park right now, so I'm not sure if
We can, yes.
Okay, cool. So I was curious to know, I don't know if this will end up being an email I need to send, but I was wondering what what's being done to promote literacy, more like independent reading, access to books while we're during distance learning. I'm a librarian in a small charter high school, and we've been sending books directly to kids through Amazon. So we've been buying them since they can't come to our library. But I was wondering if what the city might be doing, or is there someone specific that I should ask about that to help kids get access to books, physical books, if they don't have, like Kindles and things.
Kim, can we answer that? And I think Valerie would.
I would love to answer.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, go right ahead.
The library director, and we are doing a few things. We're doing curbside pickup. People call us up and say, like to pick up my reserve, or could you put aside, 6 books for my preschooler, bringing them out to people's cars, making an appointment, and doing 7 days a week. We are curbside. We're also mailing items out to people who can't make it to the library parking lot. We've done a big business in mailing books and children's materials as well to families. And we have, as a library system, have put additional money into the Sora program platform, which is part of the Overdrive digital books. And Sora is the children's materials and curriculum-driven portion of the ebook collection. And we're working with the school district on that as well. I'm happy to speak to you. Do you have a pen and paper? I'll give you my phone number.
Oh, yeah, I do. I'm ready.
It's 829-3872. 650-829-3872. And I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, starting at around 7:15 in the morning. Please give me a call.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's hear from Julianne.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon, board and council members. I'm Julianne Santos and I'm a senior at South City. Hi. During my first 3 years of experience at South City, I noticed some lack of resources at our school, which consists mostly of students of color in comparison to the resources offered at predominantly white public high schools. Our students need counselors and mental health professionals accessible as much as our white neighbors. Instead of spending all the funding for the presence of SSFPD on campus, how about we actually move funding to resources that would actually benefit students at South City? Why does our district feel the need to have police officers present for minor issues that arise when other predominantly white schools would only call upon them as an absolute last resort? Can you blame students and teachers for finding flaws with this system? 3 counselors for over 1,000 students will not suffice and never has. There are over 200 seniors that need assistance with their college apps, but with no counselors available to give that to them. There are kids that are suffering from poor mental health with no professional on campus to run to. High school is a very high pressure environment and affects every student's mental health. Please reconsider funding for better resources for students at South City and help us actually succeed. And I know that it may not affect me anymore, but for future generations that attend South City, we do not need police officers on school campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Let's hear from Patricia.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to piggyback off the last caller. So Dr. Moore explained reasons for the higher rate of suspension and expulsion at the high school level due to behavioral actions and mental health reasons that are actually noted at an earlier educational level but not addressed, which requires related services, right? So in addition, she shared that the educational system also has policies to follow how and what disciplinary actions are taken. Therefore, I want to know what purpose the city has to include SLOs. So empirical research within the last decade has determined that they are the direct cause of the school to prison pipeline path for minority youth. And unfortunately, they do not have the education, training, or experience to heal youth of any delinquent phase. Their mindset through occupational training is aligned with the law. If they had the capacity for counseling, they would not have passed the Pellet B aptitude test or the hiring personality assessment needed to qualify as an officer. They only have the superficial means through arrest to get rid of a problem child, right? So which actually will only begin the adjudication process for them. They're putting alcohol swabs on wounds that need sutures from licensed professionals with graduate degrees that include thousands of hours practice. So an equivalent concept is, if you need brain surgery, do you go to a gynecologist? No, you go to a neurosurgeon. To solve delinquency in schools, regardless of status offenses or crimes, you need intervention and treatment programs that holistically encompass the family or individual therapeutic needs. I'm not sure at what point the commission plans to address SLOs, but I would like to hear the evidence supporting why the district would continue to incorporate them when research shows that they cause more harm than good. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Patricia. Liliana.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Kellyanna Huey, and I am an alumni of the South San Francisco School District, and I would just like to say that this is a great conversation that you guys are having, and I think universal preschool is great, but I think you guys are going over the real issue, which is with our students. Why are our students not motivated to learn, and why are students missing classes? During these 2 past hours, I've heard we want more after school programs, more preschools, but you only give 2 minutes for public comment for the actual students. When I was at South San Francisco High School, I didn't hear, when I was in South City, like the school district, I never visited the nurse, like, cause I assumed that there was none. And if I ever hit my head or something, I would go to the office and they would give me an ice pack and then bring me back to class. I'd never visit the counselors because they were useless. No offense to the counselors because they were great, but there's only 3 for 1,000 students. Also, during this meeting, nothing was discussed about the generational trauma or the school to prison pipeline or anything about the students. The students were completely skipped over. And I want to acknowledge that the 2 youngest commissioners that, including the one representing the Youth Advisory Council, are absent today. If there is no representation for the students, then what is the use of this education meeting? More programs or after-school programs or preschool will not help the real problem, which is the disconnect between the students and learning. And not allowing the students or the kiddos to speak today is another disservice and silencing of the voices. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcella, you're up.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that I agree with Edith, and there is a huge language barrier with these meetings, and they need to be provided in Spanish and maybe other languages. I'm also incredibly disappointed in the non-mention of SLOs. SLOs are a joke, and they really just hinder the education system in our district. I have heard no mention of how the SLOs spend the highest amount of hours at the schools with the highest Latinx attendance, like Martin and South City. How is that not mentioned in a racial inequity meeting about education when these officers are paroling and criminalizing students and arresting students on campus? Yes, Pat Murray, they are arresting students on campus. If you thought you could get away with this, you thought wrong. My experience at SSF USD as a brown Latina was disappointing, similar to Andrea. I had to go all the way to college to learn about ethnic studies, Latino studies, or Latinx studies, Chicana studies, all of this. Why aren't we being taught this? This is really disappointing. I also think the mindset of most of the teachers in our district need to change. They would continuously hit me with those microaggressions that my Asian and white counterparts didn't have to deal with. Building off many other comments, this is unacceptable. I think you really need to sit with this as educators. Pat Murray, I haven't heard you talk this whole time, and you're the president of our school board. What is that about? Get it together, please. I know you're uncomfortable by race, but you're here to talk about racial equity. Furthermore, again, SLOs, as a party, I hope you're hearing this, they're a joke. They hurt our students, they hurt our education system. They need to get out of our education system. We need ethnic studies rooted in social justice and education. We need counselors. Freshman year, I had a friend who committed suicide at South City High School, and I only saw a counselor once in a group setting. You know how hard that is to deal with, and that's the kind of care students in our district are getting. So thanks.
Okay, next up, it looks like Liliana.
Hi, I just think we need to be bold enough to name the problem out loud. Oh, I don't know why there's an echo. Hello? Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I really just think we need to be bold enough, every single one of us, to name the problem out loud, which is that white supremacy culture is affecting our kids, and insisting on being neutral is watering down the impact that this commission is having, and it's really harming our students. We really cannot be neutral about this. Every single person on this commission needs to be either explicitly anti-racist or just stay out of the conversation entirely. By refusing to work with us in good faith, the chair of this commission has silenced the voices of the most marginalized. I also think it needs to be repeated that Cheska was not able to attend this meeting because she had school. So she asked for an alternate, and Flora Nicholas said no. So how are you going to say no when somebody's missing a meeting about educational equity because she was at school? I just don't understand that. So I'm here to ask every single commission member to either affirm that they're standing against white supremacy culture and willing to name it. Otherwise, I don't really know what the point of this is. And I'd like to see our school district do the same thing. Please don't scratch your heads and wonder why discipline is skewed by race. The answer is racism. By not calling this out, you are protecting racist admin and teachers that any previous student of color at South San Francisco could tell you are in our schools if you listened to us and allowed us into your meetings. Once you stop silencing the voices of the students, you will realize that things aren't as fine as this meeting would lead some people to believe. Listening to the voices of the students who are asking for mental health resources and stop over-policing them. I know that I experienced lots of microaggressions when I was at school. This school district protects racist teachers. Every single person in the school district needs to name white supremacy culture and say out loud in their mission statement they are going to stand against it. Also, Floor, Chained SSF is going to wait for you to address our concerns. Stop ignoring us. I know you said we could have a public comment, so thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Liliana. Is there anybody else that's paged lined up?
Trina,
comment?
yes, Trina, and then AS. So Trina. Trina, are you able to unmute?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm a parent. I'm also alumni of the school district. I grew up in South City, and I was also a past city employee with the library and childcare. So I got a real good look of how our system works, and while we have great bells and whistles and programs, you know, I want to really take a look at all our officials here, all the hosts we have here. And if you're not reading and educating yourself on anti-racism, you should not be on this. You should not be on this task force, because if your heart is not in it, you're hurting the community and the voices that we are echoing, that we want to be represented. And if you do not take these voices seriously, this is just for show, obviously. I also want to tune in on mental health. Since I'm also a youth minister in South City, I am not happy with how mental health has been handled in the past 2 decades. Constantly, I have heard traumatizing stories when they can get a meeting with a counselor. It is not, the children are not aware of the consequences of going to a counselor. Some of them get called on a 5150 because they did not understand their counselor's question. Specifically, are you gonna hurt yourself? And that has caused lots of traumatizing incidents. And I think that there needs to be more training and more counselors, well-trained counselors for mental health, especially now since we're all disconnected and these kids have no support. Some have not gone outside the house. How do you address that, especially in the time of pandemic? That's my piece. I'm done.
Thank you, Trina. AS.
Hi, this is Olga. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Moore. She's gone for the presentation. First, I wanted to speak about outreach. As I'm understanding the phase 2, I think it's very important to reach out to those who would benefit the most from the work of this commission, who are traditionally, historically, the most underrepresented and underserved. Here in South City, I believe it is our Black and Brown citizens throughout the entire South San Francisco, but more specifically in the Old Town, downtown area. You know, I also think it's very important to have these meetings in Spanish and in any other language that service, you know, these underrepresented and underserved communities, and for outreach to be a start. In terms of providing educational opportunities, you know, having grown up and raising my children, you know, we don't have equitable and adequate services nor resources. Councilwoman Floor had expressed support for a center, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much, Councilmember Floor. And I hope this commission also sees the dire necessity of both a teen center and a community center, especially since there are acute needs in terms of education or recreational opportunities. If needs are not met, in home grounds, schools will not inherit these gang or disciplinary issues. And the focus can solely be on educating and teaching rather than dealing with disciplinary issues that call for the necessity of police and ultimately land in a school to prison system. Also, as a parent, I stress the well-rounded education through sports, academics, military service, religion, and part of that education is stressing community involvement and volunteering. When my children were teens, I really wanted them to volunteer in our libraries because I volunteered in the libraries. However, they require fingerprinting, which I thought was discriminatory and unheard of at such a young age. There's no need for more barriers to becoming successful and productive citizens. And I was wondering if this commission could take a look at this disparity in the libraries in terms of volunteering. I personally chose not to have my children in the police and fingerprinting system. So we went out of South City where we shouldn't have had to. I would like for our children to volunteer here in South City, where I was born, where they were born, and where we were raised. We could all benefit from a safer and healthier community through volunteering work. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the community who'd like to join public comment? It looks like Marcella. Marcella.
Marcella already spoke, so Dolores actually.
Okay, Dolores, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, go ahead.
I'm very, very excited about what our young people have to say. And we had formed the African American Parent Committee for the district to address some of the disproportionality among our African American students. And we've discussed equity and racism during that time. But we at one point convened a panel of our students, one from every school, elementary up through high school, and we found out some very, very interesting information, which doesn't come from the parents and the educators, but coming straight from the children and the youngsters that we have in our schools. So that I strongly suggest that we get more young voices to express as they did tonight, but we've got many, many more that should be heard from in this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who's interested in participating in public comment? Who has not spoken? Someone who we haven't heard from? And if we're not able to capture your perspective today, please, again, I just remind you to send an email so that we can hear your perspective or your experience, or perhaps a new approach. Okay. So, Paige, is there anybody else? All right. Well, I think then I guess I would just ask if there's any commissioners who would like to comment, and then we have Gustavo.
Hello?
Okay, Gustavo, yeah, go ahead.
Hello. So yeah, my name is Gustavo. I was a former teacher at South City High School from 2014 to 2018. I really want to say, since coming to these meetings, I was a little bit taken back that, a lot of the young people, specifically folks from Change SSF, weren't able to rotate in. I've been part of a lot of different task force and community events, and it's very normal that people are able to rotate in, especially when you're representing a large organization like theirs. So I think we could definitely think about equity in that term and how we're going to practice that with this task force, and live up to that, right? Because we are in a pandemic, we have to be mindful of that. I also want to talk about ethnic studies. I taught ethnic studies at South City, and following along with the ethnic studies movement in San Francisco, I do look at them as a leader in the Bay Area. You know, they have, I think this task force should look into how they have used district funding to actually have a key position that allows allows teachers to get professional development and curriculum assistance. So it doesn't just fall on the teachers to do all the work like it did, unfortunately, with a lot of us who first started teaching ethnic studies here. The other thing I want to talk about quickly is that we should center marginalized voices. You know, we're talking about students who have been suspended, students who have been expelled, students who have been incarcerated, yet we haven't heard any of their voices. What is their perspective? And I think there are a lot of young people who at times are scared to participate in these type of organizations, but their voices need to matter because they have a different perspective, especially as people are talking about SLOs on campus. I definitely think SLOs should not be allowed on campus unless it's an emergency. I definitely think we can invest in other ways and we can have case managers and wraparound services on campus that can do a lot of their job and definitely cheaper and better.
Thank you very much, Gustavo. I think Commissioner Murray and then Commissioner Edith, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I do. You know, there are so many questions. I can answer them. I'm happy to answer any questions if people want to email me. You know, there were a lot of questions. I want people to know that we're not paying the SLOs, and we are in the process of examining our relationship with the South San Francisco Police Department, and part of the information gathering we're getting, or one of the things that our superintendent has been tasked to do, was to get that student voice. And she talked about focus groups and maybe even hiring somebody to help us to gather those voices. With regards to the food, anybody up to the age of 18, any school child up to the age of 18, I can get the information for you, but we give out for free through the month of December. We're giving out 7 days worth of meals, and I don't have the information right now what days they are, but we're giving them out at 3 different campuses. So any student can get food. And with the free and reduced lunches, part of the problem that we have are the people that need it aren't always getting it. There are a lot of our immigrants who don't want to sign up for it because they're afraid, because the way that the government is right now. And our school district has reached out to the different communities. We have to try to get people to sign up. But at this point in time, with the pandemic, free food, breakfast and lunch are given out for 7 days worth of meals, a few times a week, 3 times a week. Those are some of the questions that going down. I think Dr. Moore talked about mental health a little bit. We'll probably talk about it again at our meeting. But if anybody wants to send me an email, I'm happy to get any information they want.
Thank you, Commissioner Pat. Commissioner Edith.
Yes, I just wanted to thank for all the public comments, because I think in my place being here as a commissioner, I also am learning, right? So, but important to second what some of the comments were about the needs to find ways to reach out during this phase 1, because I think decisions are being made and we're voting within ourselves, but the people who are going to be affected or who are in real need, and just like right now Commissioner Pat mentioned, people who are afraid because of their immigrant status, or people who don't understand that the services are there, are not here. So their voices are not here. Their presence is not here, and we're all speaking for them. So I heard when Dolores talked about the students being interviewed or bringing them as a panel. I wonder if this commission somehow can reach out to have some kind of a survey questionnaire for reaching out to those students, families, parents, and people who are really underrepresented, because in a way, I feel that those that are present right now, including myself, are people who have the ability or have the privilege to use our voice to talk about how we feel and what we think, but that's our own perspective. So hopefully, again, as a commission, we can find a way to include the voices that are not, that right now feel silent.
I think we have one community member, Mark, and then I'll take a comment from Chair Nicholas and then Commissioner Mike. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, yeah, this is Marcella. I actually had my hand raised as Marcella, but you guys kept lowering my hand. So I'm really disappointed in that. I guess I just had some extra points I would like to point out. So yeah, again, with the SLOs, they've been on the South City campuses for 30 years, and there is no MOU on what they can do and who, or any type of like guidelines of what these police are doing around our students. So I think that it's really troubling to think about the fact that police have been on our schools' campuses for 30 years, arresting students left and right, and no one's ever brought it up until this past summer. So I think Pat Murray needs to really get on that with the board and really get those data points she's been looking for the past month and really pull it together. I don't think there's really any reason that police should be on our campuses unless maybe there's a school shooter. But we've seen that, you know, police on campuses when there's a school shooter don't really do much. They're probably like running to hide. So yeah, I think Pat Murray, she really needs to get that started. I know yeah, she's just kind of wasting time, I think. And I know Eddie Flores and some other commissioners have really pushed for Change SSF to have a presentation at the school board meetings, but she just hasn't been for it and has been putting it off. Yeah, so I think that's all. I think you're trying to silence our voices because I had my hand raised and I had to call in from a different device, which I know a lot of people just don't have the opportunity to do. So yes, thank you. Oh, and they aren't free. SLOs are not free. The city pays for SLOs. They pay nearly $500,000 for SLOs every year. So for her, this narrative that SLOs are free is just wrong. We could be using that money to provide so much more for our students. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, what we're interested in doing is wanting to make sure to make time for as many people as possible. And if there is anybody who has already spoken that wants to speak again, please send in your comments to the email that we have. We really do want to hear from as many people as possible. So I think Chair Nicholas and then Commissioner Mike.
I will have Mike go first because after what I'm going to say, I was going to join the meeting.
All right, well, thank you. I wanted to just correct a couple of things that I heard and then discuss just a moment about pre-K. But I want to add to it from that last speaker. There have been 2 sessions with the school board that I'm aware of to discuss school resource officers, one at which Police Chief Jeff as a party gave remarks. We have taken that is posted on the city website, as we're trying to be transparent about what school resource officers do. So if you missed that presentation at the school board meeting, it is posted to the city website. Again, in the spirit of trying to be as transparent as possible. On the issue of arrests, he will point out, and the records do objectively show, there have only been 3 arrests at San Francisco schools in the last 5 years. But I encourage you to watch that, and I understand the school board may have additional meetings as well. But 2 quick facts. One, something was said about Genentech. Please know there are no tax breaks that we as a city or the state or the county give to Genentech or any other business in town. We do not do that in California and certainly not in this city. Every business is tasked to pay their fair share, including Genentech. They don't care for it much, apparently. So, you know, the caller or the speaker was correct that Genentech is a frequent suer, sues the county believing they are paying too much, but they do not get any kind of tax break from this city. There was a question about universal pre-K. Please know that has been a city policy for a long time. It is incorporated by name in the new general plan that is being circulated around and has been a part of the guiding principles of that general plan for long before this particular election that was referenced came about. So that is not a new concept. In fact, it's a national concept, which the city has been following for some time. And then on the issue of building in Westboro, we do not base decisions on politics or whose district it's in. It was done objectively based on the data we had and the fact that there is a tremendous need for additional pre-K space in the Westboro area, where we have a very large Filipino community, Pacific Islander, as well as Asian community that is in need. So we will objectively look at the data on where to locate these facilities. It was also a facility that lent itself because we already own the land in Westboro. That being said, as mentioned, we do get a steady stream of dollars for childcare from businesses in South San Francisco. They're one of the very few cities, frankly, in California that have that. So it is giving us the wherewithal to expand our already robust and high quality program. I think the real issue that we need to address as a commission is the barrier to that pre-K because by and large, you do have to pay for it. We do have several income-based programs where you can go for free, but we need to discuss how do we not just create space, but also create pre-K programs that are affordable or free. I think that's the real barrier, not location in the city. So I hope that we can spend some time with that. Look at what the state has been offering. Governor Newsom, prior to COVID-19, had made this one of his priorities. And I think there may be some partnerships with the state, which would allow us to expand free pre-K. And I think that's what's really going to make a difference in the Old Town area if we can provide that. So just a few thoughts, a few fact corrections that I didn't want to leave hanging out there. I do appreciate all of the public comment. I'm glad we're now almost an hour over time, but I'm glad that all of us invested that time because I wanted to hear these voices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think, you know, it's these conversations are hard. We want to, again, invite as many diverse perspectives into the virtual room. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating today in the conversation that we had. We'll be taking your input into account as we move forward on our next meeting. And I think with that, I'll hand it over to Chair Nicholas.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware. I don't know if all the commissioners were copied on the email that Commissioners Ibasan and Commissioner Rivera has sent. So they were asking why weren't they able to send an alternate for this meeting. And I pointed to her the page to the charter under our commission membership that it said, should any outside agency or organization refuse to appoint a member, but they did, so therefore it goes to this point that if a member who has been appointed, like Commissioner Ibasan and Commissioner Rivera, fail to participate in 3 or more meetings during the term, or they fail to participate, or should an appointed member resign, the mayor can, at his discretion, remove non-participating members and appoint members to ensure the commission has 12 participating members. I just want to make sure that it's clear that we have voted on this charter, and in any big group, there has to be a structure. We cannot change it in the middle of the game. And also, Commissioner Rivera, you have a seat at the table. So if you would like to express your thoughts in here, you're welcome. And just make sure that if you have time, look over the recordings of this meetings that we have had. You pointed to us that you were being used as a punching bag. I don't believe that it was so, but you know, it was your point of view. So I just want to make sure that it's clear to everybody. And today, when you, in a way, pointed to all of us as saying that we sit idly by or we didn't protect you, I don't believe that it is so. We also know from the very beginning that there will be a very difficult conversation from the start, and we just have to maintain being respectful to each other. We have to come here with an open mind. So that's all I'm asking. We have this, I'm not here to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. And like I said, you don't have to lose in order for me to win, or for you to win in order for me to lose. We all have to win. And from the very beginning of this meeting, I also said why we are not discussing the issue of the SLO. Many of you have criticized us in the past not working with the Unified School District. Now, we have a very close relationship. They asked me that we don't talk about this because there's still information gathering phase, and I respect that. So for those who didn't hear the very first beginning of this meeting, please make sure that you listen to it. There was a recording that will be available for you, and I thank everybody here for participating. I thank the public comments, and I just want you to all be respectful. That's all we ask. We don't have to attack anybody. We have to have a level of decorum that we have to maintain all the time. Like I said, there's a very big difference between an educated person and a learned person. You have to have self-control and self-balance in all of this. Thank you. And with this, we're closing the meeting. It's adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.
Take care.